So I am back with writer director Kevin Reynolds, who's back here with me. The last time we spoke, we tackled his 1994 epic movie Rapa Nui, and I was just thinking, Kevin, of all the movies you've done, there's only one that's not a period piece, 187.
Well, Fandango was, well, I guess you could call it a
Well,
period
it,
piece.
well,
Set in the
it,
70s.
yeah, exactly, because it's set in the
Right.
70s. So.
But otherwise, yes, you're right.
I don't know if you ever thought about that. I'm sure you have.
I have. Yeah.
And I just got to me like yesterday. I was like, oh, but that's the only one that's not set in the past. Like it
Actually, I
187.
guess the Beast was not a period piece because it
Well,
was
the Beast wasn't. You're correct. You're correct. 187 and the Beast are not
right.
period pieces. But the next movie that you did after Rapa Nui was set way into the future.
Right.
And so tell me what your initial fascination was with the project named Waterworld and how you first heard about the script, which was written by Peter Rader in the mid 80s as a Mad Max uh,
Right.
knockoff, if you will, a road warrior on water. And another
I,
riff
I
on the genre, if you will.
I can't remember how I got the script. I don't know if it was sent to me by my agency or someone else, but um, I just thought the concept of the future world covered in water and people existing on the open ocean was pretty fascinating. Um, that intrigued me. So I felt like, the script needed some work, but I thought the concept was great. And I guess I didn't think through initially what the nightmare of trying to shoot a movie like that would be.
If I'm not mistaken, you reached out to your old mentor, Steven Spielberg, asking for advice before you embarked, literally, on
I
on
did. I
on the
did.
project.
I went to Stephen and I told him, I said, hey, I'm thinking about shooting this movie Waterworld that's set entirely on the open ocean. I said, I mean, do you think that's a good idea? He said, you might want to do it. He said, I'll never do it again. So after his experience with, and he never has.
And he
After
never
Jaws,
has. Yeah.
he's never done it again. He knew what it was going to be like.
Yeah. I was wondering if you remember anything about the draft that you first read of the script, some of the imagery in there that you were initially fascinated by, stuff that didn't make into the movie. I know some contraptions were more into sci-fi, uh, were like more sci-fi than others than what ended up in the movie. Like, if I'm not mistaken, the Mariner had is the thing that he uses to turn piss into water. In the first draft, in the I don't know how you call it, in the first version of the script by Rader, it was like more like a kidney sort of thing. Any more of that didn't make into
Yeah,
the movie?
there were a lot of things, that were different from what ended up in the final film. But the one thing I remember more than anything else in Peter Rader's first draft that just struck me, and it did not end up in the final film, was the Mariner had a horse on his boat.
I know
He had a
it did.
horse, and
Yeah.
I was just like, "Oh my God, talk about a nightmare." I mean, it's hard enough to shoot on the water.
Yeah.
If we had to put a horse out there on the boat as well,
About yeah.
we scratched that immediately. It was just, if you were doing an animated film, sure, you
Yeah.
could do it. But I mean, it would have taken twice as long, three times as long to shoot the movie if you'd done something like that. It was insane.
Yeah. And uh, but have you ever seen the version? I guess you have. It's called the Ulysses cut of the movie.
Yeah, you mean well, there's a couple of different cuts. The Ulysses cut, as I recall, actually includes a scene that we shot. Actually, this is why I decided I really wanted to do this film because I thought it was such a great device. At the end of the movie, when they end up on dry land and the mariner sails off and the two women climb up on top of the mountain to watch him sail away, and they stumble across this plaque
Hmm.
and they clear the grass away, and the plaque says, "Here on this spot, in 1953, Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary first set foot on the summit of Mount Everest." And you go, of course, it's the highest spot on the planet.
Yeah.
That's dry land. And I love that. I thought that was brilliant. And we shot it. But in the original theatrical cut, the studio took it out. And I was like, why would you take that out? It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's very
You know,
ingenious. It was
it's so
very,
ingenious. I thought, that was such a great thing that Peter thought up.
yeah.
And they took it out. And fortunately, later it exists in the Ulysses cut. But I never understood why they took it out of the
No, yeah.
first theatrical release.
And I've seen you mention this as the thing that really made you, as you just said, want to do the movie as a kind of Planet of the Apes type moment at the end.
Exactly.
The Statue of
Exactly. It's
Liberty,
just like the end of Planet of the Apes, the big reveal.
the big reveal at the end.
Yeah. And I mean, can you imagine the Planet of the Apes without that scene at the end?
No, no, it
No,
would be just it wouldn't be what it is. It just
no,
wouldn't.
no.
And so what were so you got the script, you were interested in doing it, but you felt it needed work. And so I guess you sat down to work on it.
I didn't at first.
Hmm.
Eh, there were several steps prior to that, um, before the thing even went into production. I wasn't going to rewrite it unless somebody said, "Hey, we're making this movie." Um, so it wasn't until Larry Gordon got, Kevin Costner and I reunited and we both agreed to do it. And Universal said, okay, we'll make this. And they paid a holding fee for both of us.
Hmm.
And that's when I started to work on the script.
And what were your contributions to the script, story-wise, structure-wise? Some of those, not all of those. I mean, what did you
God,
inject into
Pietro,
it?
it's been so long, I can't remember. The thing
Okay,
went through so many different drafts. We had different writers on it.
okay,
Um, I think the thing I was trying to do more than anything was to just make it plausible. Uh, try to make the events as plausible as possible. Not so much science fiction, but make you go, yeah, I could see this happening in that scenario.
yeah,
So I tried to add some plausibility to the story, as I
yeah,
recall. Um, I made the smokers. I did a lot of work with the smokers. The idea of the Exxon Valdez being the ship that they end up being on and stuff. I just thought that was interesting that, these Neanderthals, the smokers and the deacon and all, they're so retro, so backwards that, of course, that's their ship is the remnants of the Exxon Valdez. And, they're burning the last fossil fuels on the planet.
yeah,
I just felt like that was kind of apropos for the theme of the movie. But other than that, there were a lot of contributions.
yeah. And so you wanted this to be more couched in reality than what the original script maybe was, right?
I don't want to say couched in reality because the whole thing is not necessarily couched in
Oh,
reality.
okay, like
But
it to be
I wanted
plausible.
to make it as plausible as possible and not so there were elements I felt in the original draft that were a little too science fiction
Hmm?
that
Yeah,
felt like this is fantasy. And
yeah.
so I tried to reduce that as much as I could.
And do you feel like uh, do you feel you accomplished the tone you were going for? Like the no, okay, I don't want to make you laugh, but what you were trying to accomplish to make it as plausible as possible. Do you
Not completely. No, I don't feel like we did.
okay?
Again, when you work on a movie of that scale and that size, and I think we talked about this in the
Yeah,
last episode. you lose a certain amount of control because there's so many elements and it's so huge. It's like this giant aircraft carrier moving through the water. And if you want to do a course correction, it takes a couple of miles to course correct. It's not like in a small, nimble boat where you can do this and that.
Yeah.
It's this monster, and you've got all these influences involved, from different production elements, special effects, locations, the pressures of the amount of money that's being spent,
Okay.
and it influences everything day to day. So all you can do as a director in that situation is try to hang on to a vision, try to drive it towards that vision as much as possible, realizing that you're never going to get exactly what you set out to do.
Okay.
And it's not until you look at the final product and you go, okay, well, this is what it is. It ultimately it kind of takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, you were mentioning on the last time that it's much easier for a director to course correct or be more in control when you're on a small budget or small production than it is
Right.
on these giant movies. What do you feel you really did pull off creatively on this in this movie that you're proud of? Like, oh my God, this is really what I set out to do, a scene, a sequence, or I don't know. Is there something in there? I know you've been trying to suppress all memories relating
Well,
to
yeah, I was
Waterworld.
just about to say, yeah, it's been so long, and yeah, you do. You try to suppress because a lot of it's quite painful to recall. Yeah, I feel like some of the sequences in it are, I like to think they're pretty impressive.
I mean, the
Just
Atoll
they're a
sequence at the
monster.
beginning, come on, you gotta be proud of that. The
Which
all
one? The
the
attack
eight,
on the
yeah,
atoll?
the attack on the Atoll is terrific.
It was monster. It was monster. Yeah. I mean, you look at it, and it would be hard enough to do that on dry land, much
Yeah,
less
on the
what
water.
we did. We did it on water. So yeah, I'm proud of what we managed to do. I think it works. I think the sequence works. Uh, and there are other sequences that were similarly ambitious, like the end when they blow up the D's and Deacon tries to take off in the plane and crash
Yeah,
it. I can't tell you all the elements involved in that, and I storyboarded that meticulously. And, when you're doing a sequence like that, you really do have to storyboard it because there's so much preparation that has to be done for every single shot. And then you turn it over to the production team, the physical effects guys, and they execute things like him sliding down the line, the plane taking off. And you have to break it into all these separate elements. Every shot is a separate element. And in fact, in that sequence, those shots are shot in multiple locations. When he's taking off on the deck of the plane, there's a pilot actually, starting to lift off. But the crash, when you turn around and you see the plane lift off and it
yeah.
crashes, that was shot on a on a set we built up in the up in the desert north of Los Angeles when they
Oh
actually
wow.
crashed the plane. Because the actual D set was this giant location in the city of Industry, in a suburb of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And so when you look down on the D's from up high, when the deacon's talking to people and stuff, you see the set with all the smokers running around, and the water off of that is all CGI. It was actually land, but it's you know
So
with
computer generated?
it's all computer generated water off the side of it. So that's the complication I'm talking about. Every single shot has to be pre-designed and thought of in advance. So you're like, okay, for this shot where you're looking down, we've got 500 extras, running around. You got planes moving and stuff, and then there's water off on the side. Okay, if you decide on the day, well, I don't know, I think I want to change this, you can't because it
Oh,
costs
yeah.
$200,000 to make a change.
Yeah,
So you kind of have to stick with the plan to some extent.
yeah.
But that's the enormity of it. I mean, look, anytime you work on a big picture like that, this is what you encounter. It's not unique to me. It's not unique to Waterworld. It's just
Oh
anytime
yeah.
a filmmaker takes on a project of that size, that's what you're going to encounter.
It's fascinating to me that you're more akin to, I mean, I get the feeling you're a filmmaker that likes uh, intimate pictures, intimate stories, if you will. But for one reason or another, you've you've just made so many giant epic movies.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
I mean,
I
I
mean, I
feel
go back.
I think of Fandango. Sorry, I sorry to catch you up, but I
It's
think
all
of
right.
Fandango, and you did terrific with that. It's such an intimate story. And I think of The Beast also. It's kind of contained, if you will. It's
But
not.
it's still got a scale to it,
Yeah,
you know.
it does. Uh,
Um,
but then you go and do Robin Hood and do Waterworld and do Rapa Nui, and it's like you. I mean, I love all of those, and I love the ambition that you have in doing in tackling those, because it reminds me of what David Lean actually did.
well, I was about to say David Lean was a big influence on me because David Lean, unlike any other filmmaker up to that time, he was able to tell an intimate story against a gigantic backdrop, unlike anybody
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
You know, Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, Bridge on the River Kwai. Nobody did it like
Passage to
David Lean
India.
did. Right. All those movies. Ryan's Daughter.
Yeah,
He did it, but he was making pictures at a time when you sort of had more flexibility on giant movies like that. I'll never forget talking to some people that worked on Lawrence of Arabia. And one of the guys, he was an AD on Lawrence of Arabia, and he said some days they would do one shot. They would do one shot. It took them over a year to shoot the movie, but that was back in the elegant days of filmmaking, where if you had a reputation in the movie and stuff, you could do that. If you wanted, you know, that great scene in the desert, the famous arrival of Omar Sharif on the camel coming out of the
yeah,
mirage and stuff,
yeah,
one of the classic
yeah.
entrances in motion picture history.
Iconic, classic,
I
beautiful.
forget how long it took them to shoot that sequence just to get those conditions ideal for that. And, you
Lighting and
know, at
everything.
the time, you know, the producers were going crazy because it took them a couple of days to do it. But look at the result. I mean, it stands the test of time. But again, that was an era when you could get away with that. When I was in film school, the guy came out who had been, he'd worked in production at Columbia Pictures. And he had been in London working for Columbia at the time when Lean was making uh, Bridge on the River Kwai. And they shot that in Sri Lanka, which was called
Okay.
Ceylon back then. And they were way over budget, way over schedule. So he flew down to Ceylon and he met with Lean and he said, David, you know, we gotta pick this up here. I mean, we're way behind. He said, I need to see your schedule for the next 2 weeks. And so Lean said, okay, well, I'll bring it to you tomorrow. And so Lean shows up the next day and hands him this schedule. And over the next 2 weeks, he planned to do 9 shots. And the guy goes, what's this? And he goes, well, that's the schedule for the next 2 weeks. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, yeah, the first day we got to hike into this location. It's going to take us all day. And then we set up and it'll take us all day to do the shot. And it'll take us a day to hike back. And then the next day we're going to go to this other place and I'll take it. And the guy goes, no, 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 no. He said, we can't do this. He said, it's too expensive. We can't do it.
Wow.
And Lean, you know, he pouted and got pissed off. And they compromised and he did 9 shots in like a week or something. You can't do that anymore.
No,
You
right?
can't make movies like that. The other thing about those movies, when Lean did those things, everything you see is in camera. There are no special effects. All of that is in camera.
Yeah.
And to me, when you see that, you feel it. It feels more real than when you're watching something that's heavy with special effects, like a lot of the pictures today.
Yeah.
There's an inauthenticity to them today where it feels more like a cartoon.
Yeah, it's
And
plastic. It
it,
feels like plastic. It feels like
you sense that it's not real.
yeah, exactly. The camera
But
doesn't lie.
when it's the camera doesn't lie, when it's all in camera, you feel it. And
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference in your perception of the story and the film
And how involved you get into
and
it.
how involved you get. But
And
again, you know,
uh,
yes, that David Lean was a gigantic influence on me. So yes, I suppose that's why I was drawn to stories of, you know, great little arcs, personal arcs against a big backdrop. And yeah, inevitably that's what I tended to end up making.
yeah. And let me tell you, your movies have stood the test of time as well. I mean, people talk about Robin Hood all the time, that people talk about Waterworld all the time, Fandango all the time, and Rapa Nui, believe it or not, when I know I've heard people bring it up and I didn't think that they would know about it. They love it when they end up watching it.
Well, you're very kind. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like them.
Yeah, but
So,
okay, okay. You're bound to get those people anyway.
right.
I mean, I'm
You're
sure.
very kind.
I'm
You're
sure.
very kind.
No, I'm just being honest. I'm sure there's people who don't like Lawrence of Arabia.
True. I
So,
mean,
what do you
what can
make
I
of
say?
that?
I feel incredibly fortunate that I got to go on these amazing adventures. As
Yeah,
torturous as they were, I mean, they had huge ups and huge downs, and
that's
I don't know
life.
if I could ever do them again. I feel incredibly fortunate that I got to do them at all
Yeah,
because very few people in the world ever get to have those experiences.
exactly. And the imagery that you were talking about, the classic Lawrence of Arabia, iconic images. I mean, I think of Robin Hood. I think of Waterworld. I mean, the attack on the atoll. I mean, I could put that up with any great scene in Lawrence of Arabia. It's just as epic to me because it's all in
Well, thank
camera.
you.
It's in
I mean,
camera,
I'll tell you, I'll
real.
give you an example. I'll give you an example. One shot in Waterworld, maybe we talked about this before. It's right at the climax of it when the mariner's escaping from the atoll, and the guy with the quad 50 machine gun who's machine gunning constantly, and his goggles get covered up,
Yeah.
and the mariner hits his craft with a harpoon and spins him around so that his gunfire moves
It,
across the front
yeah.
and ends up hitting the deacon. Okay, there's a shot in that where you're behind the deacon who's on his barge looking towards the gate of the atoll, and you've
Okay.
got all these smokers on jet skis coming
Oh
out,
yeah.
and you see this machine gun fire raking across the water towards the barge.
Yeah.
That one shot, let me tell you what it took to get that one shot. If it was on land, it would be fairly simple. Physical effects would go out there and just set squibs along the ground,
Yeah.
to show the track of the machine guns. Okay, we're in open water. So to create that, special effects had to go out and they had to create special squibs and glass bulbs. And
Mhm.
every one of them, we're in 90 feet of water. To make a line, they had to take each one of those and go down to the bottom and anchor it. Each one of those hits, those
Yeah,
squib
yeah, yeah,
hits,
yeah.
every one of them has a separate line down to the bottom of the ocean. And that's set up between the barge with Dennis Hopper on it, all the smokers on that, looking towards the gates. In the background, you've got the barge with the machine gun on it sweeping towards you. The mariner's rope is pulling that. All that had to be coordinated at the same time. And if we didn't get it the first time, special effects was going to have to go out and reset every one of those squib heads on the water, which would take half a day
Yeah.
to do. So we
Wow.
did it in the first take, fortunately, but just the coordination to get everything correct, where the machine gun sweeps across, the smokers are coming out the gate, and it's over the deacon's back, and then you see the machine gun hits coming across the water towards the camera. I think it's in the movie for maybe 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah, but I remember it vividly. I mean, it just I remember it because it's happening in camera.
Right,
It's not made
right.
up on the computer.
But the time it took to do
Yeah.
that shot that's on screen for 2 or 3 seconds is enormous. And the audience doesn't realize when they're watching the picture,
Yeah, the
that's
audience,
what it took to get that one
yeah.
shot.
Audiences, I mean, if audiences knew what it takes to get those shots, I think they would have a deeper appreciation. They wouldn't maybe they wouldn't feel like, oh, this is just a movie, like a throwaway thing. Uh, I believe that. I think the audience needs to be educated, actually,
You know,
in terms of what they see, in terms of what they because why do you think there's so many people out there right now watching all these crappy movies on Netflix?
well,
Because
I have to disagree because I think yes, maybe the audience would appreciate it more, but I think it's better that the audience doesn't know what was involved because they can watch the movie more objectively. They're simply watching the story unfold, not influenced at all by what went on behind the scenes. I can't watch the movie objectively because I know what it took to get
okay.
those shots. That's what I'm thinking about when I watch the movie. That's why I can't watch the movie
Okay, yeah, that's why you
because
can
I
watch
knew
it.
what was involved.
Yeah.
It's better for the audience to have no idea how we did it, to simply be affected by the
Right.
shots themselves.
In the moment, yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
correct. That you're right. Maybe it's just I was trying to being defensive of the movie because
And I appreciate that. I
because
appreciate that.
I
It's a dilemma that it's a dilemma for the filmmaker. The filmmaker knows what went into it, what's involved. The audience doesn't, and that's probably better.
yeah. But anyway, the whole sequence, I mean, it's just mind blowing. Mind blowing, man. It's just beautiful. It's just perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect action sequence. It just
Oh,
never
thank you.
lets up. It never stops. It's just exciting, and I mean, and it's another. There's another shot in the movie that I like very much. It's a tiny bit like it's a quick cut, and it's when the mariner at the end is trying to tie the hook into the plane,
On the
the stick,
plane.
and he does it like so quickly. And I like it because you see, like the camera is on the face, basically on the close up of the mariner doing it while it's taking off. I mean that moment as
I'll tell you how we did that.
stuck with me all this time. You know, since ever since I
Well,
saw it.
the way we did it was, I mean, in the previous shot, I mean, Kevin comes down the line and he hits and he jumps off and he's got the grappling hook. In the background behind him, the plane is moving forward for takeoff. He
Okay.
grabs the hook, runs out of frame, and the next shot is from below the
Yeah.
strut on the plane, and he jumps into frame and hits it
Yeah.
as the plane goes away. Well, the way we shot that, I took the strut off, physical effects. It's not really on the plane. It's on a car. It's on a vehicle. You're
Oh.
looking over the strut, moving down through that set with all the action going off in the background, and Kevin's running by and throwing it over the strut itself. I mean,
Oh.
we had to do multiple takes. It took multiple takes before he got it, finally. It's a tough shot.
Yeah.
And it probably took 3 or 4 takes before he managed to snag it. But it would be too difficult to try to do that off of a real plane.
Yeah.
So, because you don't see the whole plane, you just take the landing
Yeah.
gear
That
off
was
and
so
put it on a
ingenious.
truck. That's how we shot it.
Wow. Well, that's. I mean, I applaud you. I mean, you're such an ingenious. In your movies, there's all these angles and the way you shoot things that I mean, I just appreciate it so much. That's one of the shots that maybe people don't even notice that, don't even pick up on it, but it's always stuck with me. I don't know what the kinetic energy of it. I don't know what's about it that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because the other guy, and this was the highest compliment to me, was the guy who really liked that shot was Dean Semler, the cinematographer.
Oh, wow.
You
Okay.
know,
I'm in good company then. Okay.
yeah, for Dean Semler to compliment a shot was a big deal to me. So
Yeah. And I was gonna ask you what was your relationship with Dean and
Dean's great. Dean's great. He's, not only is he a great cinematographer, he's just a really nice person, super nice person.
yeah.
And I really enjoyed working with him.
Wow. He had shot, I mean, all these Mad Max films. He won the Oscar for
Dances with
Dances with
Wolves.
Wolves and
Right.
a bunch of other great stuff that is known for. So you were bringing with him on the project Mark Isham, right, to do the score? What am I wrong? Am I right?
You know, again, I got overruled on the composer on that.
Okay.
Uh,
But what kind of a score were you looking for Mark to do? I mean, to compose.
he did such a fabulous job on the Beast. I mean, it just
Yeah.
fit tonally. It fit for a guy like Mark on that picture. I knew that I couldn't do what I normally like to do, which is do needle drops through the whole thing, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
There's going to have to have a composer on something like that. You just give the composer a lot of leeway, and you just say, do something with this. If you trust the guy, know he's creative and he's got the chops, he's going to bring something to it. You have to trust him. You can't get too specific. You have to let him do his thing. And I was willing to do that with Mark to see what he could come up with because I knew he would come up with something great.
Yeah.
But there were other people who shall remain nameless who had a bigger influence on the movie than I did, who wanted a more traditional score. And
Hmm.
that's why
But
they ended up with the score that they did.
but did Mark ever like write any piece of music for the film
Not
or?
that I remember. No,
Okay, because I thought the score had been, I don't know, partly composed and then thrown away. So I was wondering if anything had ever been written and
no,
what it sounded
no,
like. Okay.
no, no.
As far as you recall, I don't know if it ever came up, but do you feel or do you remember Universal ever talking about possibility of this being a franchise, like sequel, there being a sequel to this? Was it ever floated around?
I don't remember there ever being talk of there being a sequel till well after the movie was finished. I mean, at the time they were just sweating bullets. So, the studio was, there was a certain amount of chaos going on because the studio was being sold.
Hmm.
It was the most expensive picture ever made at that point. So there were a lot of really nervous executives at the
Okay.
studio. And I think all they wanted to do at that point was to just get through the movie intact
Yeah.
and have a successful movie and not lose their jobs.
No.
And uh,
No.
later I heard, and I think it was a sarcastic mention, Tom Pollock, who was like one of the executives of Universal, joked about Waterworld too, but I don't think he was serious.
No.
However, as we spoke of before, they did take huge portions of the set and brought them to Universal Studios in LA and made a theme park attraction out of it, which
Yeah.
is still apparently wildly popular to this day.
It is wildly popular to this day. I went.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, yeah. Had fun. It was fun.
Well, good,
Yeah, it
good.
was real fun, and I mean, it was just a very condensed version of the movie, of the
Right.
storyline, But I mean, it's fun, and the amount of people that go is tremendous. I mean, it's just very, very popular.
Yeah. I think they made their money back.
Yeah, they have, I'm sure. Because there's this legend that Waterworld was such a giant bomb, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. But people are not willing to report the truth.
Well, it's sometimes the truth is less interesting to people than um,
And a lie.
the lie, and again, you see it happen all the time in situations where suddenly, for whatever reason, the press decides, oh, this is a disaster, but people are going to tune in because it's a disaster. So let's promote the disaster. And that's what happened with Waterworld, is that people wanted it to be a gigantic, colossal failure because they felt like that's going to get more eyeballs. The fact that we're watching this disaster unfold rather than, the production stuff, but it's going along fine. That wasn't interesting. It was more interesting to portray it as being a disaster.
Master.
And maybe I mentioned this before. Um, the guy, the guy who was actually the head of Universal at the time, Lou Wasserman, um, someone told me that Lou said that the bad press on Waterworld cost us $50 million in domestic box office.
That's
And
a lot of money.
I think he was probably right.
Yeah, and that like makes me think like I don't believe in any publicity you can get is good.
No, no, it's not.
No, because in this case, this is proof that that's just BS. I mean, bad publicity is not, I don't think does anyone any good.
No, I don't know. Maybe I told this story too, but I guess the first time they screened it in New York for some critics, uh, you know, all these people showed up because they, they were hoping to report this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And apparently, one critic walked out of the screening and he went, "Well, it didn't suck." That was he was disappointed that he couldn't say it was horrible.
Yeah,
So
like what the why? I mean, I guess people I don't know. I will never understand, like rooting for something or someone to fail. I mean,
yeah,
okay, you don't like it, you don't like this movie, you don't like this piece of music. That's fine. That's your personal, that's your personal taste. But to root for that to fail or to go down the toilet. I mean, it's just. I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, there are a lot of things that make sense. And by the same token, I mean, I personally think there are a lot of movies that have been really successful, especially with the critics, who
Yeah,
don't deserve it, who don't
yeah,
deserve to be
yeah.
successful. But for
Because
whatever reason, the
they build them
critics,
up.
they build them up, you know?
And
So, yeah.
so you, so when the movie, so the movie was a giant undertaking. The production was difficult, you were mentioning, but your choice of shooting on water actually, it becomes palpable that these people are actually stranded on water because you guys were out there. So
Yeah.
even well, it may have caused tension during the production, that choice to be out there on the water. But as an audience member, I commend you for it because it comes off terrific in meaning that I feel like I'm out there. These people are actually out there. They're not on a sound stage with green screen going on. So the artistic choices behind that, I mean, are just very, very sound and valid to me. Because
Well,
you being
thanks.
an artist, you're coming at it as an artist. You could have shot it in a tank, but decided not to.
It's too big to shoot in a tank.
No,
It was way
exactly.
too
But
big.
you could maybe have shot portions of it more in a tank or more or
Right.
less on the ocean, maybe. I don't know. But if anyone was to redo it, they would shoot it all CGI now, and it just
It
wouldn't be
would
the
be
same.
at least half the movie, if the movie was to be shot today, at least half the movie would be CGI easily.
And I don't think you would go for it. You, Kevin Reynolds, director, I don't think you would accept that choice.
I wouldn't. I mean, to me, if you do that, I'd look at it and go, why don't you just do an animated version? Because
Yeah, exactly.
it's a cartoon.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So you're coming off of Waterworld, giant production. You're tired, you're fed up with the studio system, you're just not in the mood to undertake maybe another film so soon. But just 2 years later, 187 is released.
mhm.
I thought you would have taken more time off after Waterworld than you actually did. And this is a very different picture than Waterworld was and what Rapa Nui was and Robin Hood was. So you were coming off of three really big pictures, and now you're going into a more of a drama thriller, more of a contained picture, if you will. How did the movie come to you? How did the script find its way to you? What was it about the script that attracted you to the material? And I know that Mel Gibson's company was involved with that. Uh,
Yeah. Mel, God bless him, his company Icon sent me the script and said, "Would you be interested in this?" And I read it, and I was quite taken by it. It was such a there've been so many sort of teacher movies out there that all ended
yeah.
up kind of they were a little too glossy and sweet and unrealistic, I thought. And this one was pretty tough. Um, and
So
it was written. It was
they sought
it,
you out. Uh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, they did, and it was written by a teacher.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was a smaller, more contained drama, and I like the idea of that. Plus, after Waterworld, yeah, I was really tired. I didn't want to do another picture like that. I wanted to do something that was more liberating, that was more organic. And I set out to actually do something that was very stylized, just really play with film um, in a way that yeah, I couldn't do on a movie like Waterworld. So yeah, Mel asked me to do the picture, and I thought about it debated it for a little bit, and said, "Okay, I'll do this." Um, we did a little work on the script, like I changed the ending to the Russian roulette scene,
Hmm.
and I have to say that was maybe the best filmmaking experience I had because Icon and Mel's company they could not have been more supportive. and they let me make the picture, I wanted to make. And it was a lot of fun. Um, we got to take a lot of chances filmically,
Yeah.
uh, stylistically. I mean, it's a very stylized piece,
Yeah.
and that was fun to do. Um, and a lot of storyboarding, a lot of thought beforehand. I mean, for example, there's a sequence in the classroom where they've put up cameras in the classroom where we shot it. We actually shot it with a toy video camera, a Fisher Price toy
Oh,
video
oh
camera.
yeah.
We
Uh-huh.
were trying to create what it would look like through a camera in the classroom.
Yeah.
So my cinematographer, 𝙁𝙤𝙤𝙗𝙗𝙗𝙗 who'd never shot a feature before, he'd done some commercials and stuff,
Oh,
but
really?
because he never shot one, he didn't have any preconceived notions about how you had to work. So I said, it'd be great if we did this. And it was like a POV through a camera. He goes, well, I'll just get a Fisher Price camera. So he bought a toy camera for like $100. And we shot that scene through a Fisher Price camera and
Wow.
then, converted it to film. And that's what's up in the movie. So we did a lot of stuff like that, a lot of stuff. And it was fun.
So I guess you kind of went back to your roots. I mean, not to the beginning of your career with 187, trying new things. Maybe you've always tried new stuff with each of your movies, but I guess
But
the freedom that you had while doing something like Fandango and then 187 is similar in the sense that
yeah,
you didn't have constrictions on Fandango from a producing standpoint. I mean, Amblin wasn't on your case, and just like
right.
187, you were free to experiment and to exercise that muscle again as
I
an
was, and it was great to do that. We didn't have as much money as the big movies, but that was okay. You just had to get more inventive in
yeah.
the way you did things. I mean, another example I can think about, there's a scene out on the school grounds where he's confronted by Cesar, the Clifton Collins character,
Oh,
and he's really you can see this pin up anger in him. And as he's walking away from the scene, he's walking towards camera, and I wanted to personify this anger inside of him. So I wanted the camera to shake like he was
okay.
shaking and have the shaking increase as he came towards camera. So what we did was we just put the camera on a regular tripod with a geared head, and on the handle we loosened it way up and taped a drill to it with a
Uh,
weight. And so as he's walking towards camera, we just hit the drill and increased the speed. Because it had this weight on it, it shook the camera as he came towards camera. And that's what you see in the movie. But it was something that simple.
yeah,
You had to think like that inventively, but it was fun to do.
yeah.
Plus, I was fortunate to have a really good cast. I mean, we had some
Like
great
Jackson.
actors. Sam Jackson was great in the movie. John Hurd, who's no longer with us,
Yeah.
played a creep, and he was great. And Clifton Collins was wonderful, and it was really fun. It was really fun.
Were you like, were you satisfied by the audience, by the reception that it got?
A lot of people hated the movie. They hated it because they felt like it was too negative, and they, got lectures from some critics because they just felt like it was too negative. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, it was another one that didn't make a dime.
Yeah.
Uh, didn't make a dime, but it's a movie I'm actually very proud of.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's yet again, it stands as the test of time. I mean, it's inventive, the choices you took, the chances you took artistically with the shots and all. I mean, I think like, I think it does stand the test of time. And Sam Jackson is actually fantastic in it.
Yeah, Sam was great in it, and I like to think that by the end of the picture, it moves you somehow, and you kind of
Yeah.
sympathize with the plight of these people that Sam represents.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. All I can say is, it's a project that I'm proud of, and I'm sorry that it didn't do more business.
Um, in the intervening years between Waterworld and 187, 2 years, a year and a half, I don't know, were you like developing, writing other stuff on your own? and or just did 187 come straight after Waterworld? Um,
187 came pretty soon after that.
uh,
I can't remember any projects at the time that I was really working on. There was one that had been around, I mean, we'd already started working on, I think we'd started working. No, it was after that. Learning Italian was after that.
yeah.
So no, there wasn't really anything I was working on
Yeah.
until 187 came along.
And after 187 to in the next picture that you would eventually make, those like 4 or 5 years, were you then developing something?
Yeah, I was trying to get other projects off the ground. One of them at that time we started working on was learning Italian. Um,
So learning Italian back in the late 90s?
it's when it generated. And,
Really?
and the way it came about, uh, this friend of mine, Ed Stone, who is one
Yeah.
of the funniest human beings I've ever met, and he's a writer. And Ed and I said, "Hey, let's write something together." And we were like, "Okay, well, what do we want to write about?" And I was like, "Okay, well, first let's decide where would we like to make a movie."
Yeah, exactly. Like,
That was the first consideration. Where would we like to make a movie? And I said, Italy. And we're like, okay, let's make something set in Italy. It ended up being in Sicily, but it's Italian. So that was the genesis of the project, deciding that we wanted to do something that was set in Italy.
Italy.
And Ed started to, write the first draft of it and all at that time. And I can't even remember now. There were a couple other projects that was on and off of. It was actually 3 years after 187 that Count of Monte Cristo came along. But
Okay.
yeah,
So Disney came to you with Count of Monte Cristo, or was
actually,
you didn't
no, it was
originate it,
actually the
right?
producers. Well, it was the producers at God, what's the name of the company?
Beacon,
I can't remember the name of the production company.
Beacon Picture? No, no, no. Beacon Picture?
No, not no. Icon was Mel's company.
No, I mean Beacon.
But Spyglass,
Oh,
Spyglass,
Spyglass. Yeah, you're right. Spyglass.
Spyglass, and so they came to me with the project. And actually, one of the uh, head executives at Spyglass had been one of the executives at the company that produced Robin Hood, Gary
Okay.
Barber. And so I guess Gary brought my name up, and so I met with him and said, "Hey, we want to redo the Count of Monte Cristo," and they had this script that was written by Jay Walpert, and they were already in talks with Jim Caviezel, who at the time, they thought is going to be the next big thing. So they, had already decided Jim's going to be in it. And so I met with Jim and it's like, yeah, okay, we could make this together, and decided to do it. And
Mhm.
so in pretty short order, like we were talking about before, you kind of never know before. You don't often know where a movie's going to come from. You can be working on something else, and then suddenly a script will come to you out of the
Yeah.
blue, and quickly you're just changing direction and going this way towards a new project. And that's what happened on Count of Monte Cristo. It all came together very quickly.
Very quick.
Spyglass had a deal with Disney at the time. Disney, I guess, already said, yes, we'll distribute this. So very, very quickly, I was on a plane to Ireland, started scouting locations.
Wow.
Um,
I seem to remember reading that at the time you were, I don't know if it was offered to you through Mel Gibson's company, a movie about surfers or something like that.
Mavericks,
Mavericks.
Mavericks. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I toyed with that very briefly. The real reason I didn't want to do Mavericks is another water
Water.
movie.
Okay, because there was water involved.
Just didn't want to do another water movie.
Yeah, you had enough of water, right?
I had enough of water. Yeah.
So Count of Monte Cristo is actually my very favorite version of the story. I wa-
Thank you.
I watch it each New Year's Eve. It's a tradition. I don't know why, but I just do. And I just love the kinetic energy of it. Again, it's one of your trademarks. There's just something terrific about the way you shoot uh, things, and I think Caviezel is well cast in the movie. All the cast is great. It's just a perfect movie. It's just, it's really, again, really, really solid as all of your other films are. Like, I think of Robin Hood, and it's the definitive retelling of the story. It is.
Well,
People.
Errol Flynn might disagree with you, but
Okay, well, the airplane
thanks.
version and the 91 version are because the other ones no one remembers. Let me tell you,
No,
no one remembers any of the other ones. So there's airplane and your version in 91. That's it.
well,
I'm the audience, let me
thanks.
tell you. And
Thank you.
so I was wondering if I know you did watch the Count of Monte Cristo version from the 30s and one from the 70s kind of in preparation maybe for I think you did go back and rewatch those two. I guess
Yeah, I did. I read the book. I read the
you
book,
did read. I have read the book as well, but
all 1,500 pages, the unabridged version.
yeah, of course.
Yeah,
And your ending, well, the movie doesn't end as the novel does.
no, no.
So what was your why did you decide to do that in the movie and not follow the novel?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I read the script first, and I'd never read the book. I'd never seen the other versions.
Oh, so you read the
I
book
read,
afterwards.
uh-huh,
Okay.
after I read the script. I mean, and I read Jay's script, and I was entertained by it. And what I realized after I read the book and I saw the other versions was, look, there's no way you can put every single aspect of the 1,500-page novel into a 2-hour movie. And that's a complaint that a lot of people that see Monte Cristo who love the book, they don't like this version of Monte Cristo because they say it's not the book. And my response is, it's not. It can't be the book.
No,
It
exactly.
can't. The book's 1,500 pages long. And I say to them, I say, okay, how long did it take you to read the book? And they go, well, a couple of weeks. And I go, exactly. I
Yeah.
had 2 hours to tell the story. There are over 50 characters in the book.
Yeah.
Can't put 50 characters in the movie. So all you can do is attempt to try to be true to the theme of the book as much as possible and do something entertaining. The other previous versions, a lot of them were miniseries,
Yeah.
and they went on for hours.
Television stuff. Yeah.
We didn't have that. We had 2 hours to
Yeah.
tell the story. So of necessity, we had to hugely condense it down and try to remain true to the theme of the book. So I think people that don't know the book or have not read the book perhaps appreciate the movie more because they're not familiar with what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
There's this movie and then there's the book. They're two different things. They're
Yeah.
two different things
I
completely.
think I think that people can I've read the book and I can appreciate the book and the movie you made. It's
Yeah,
not
they're
like
they are.
another
They're
take. It's another take on the story. I mean,
no,
what's wrong with that? I mean, it
right,
doesn't really. I mean, it's not like you're putting you're calling Monte Cristo a different name. You're not like making it up, like inventing new stuff and really making something that's unrecognizable. I mean, you recognize the basics of the story. The revenge is there. The elements are there. The soul, there's
right,
an emotional truth. I mean, it's emotionally true to the novel. That's what I'm trying to say.
right, right.
So
You
I,
know, it's tough. It's tough, and it's you get this a lot of times with classic novels.
yeah,
People have this complaint, especially 19th century novels that are huge and they're
yeah,
just voluminous, and it's very hard to condense them down into something that's a 2-hour project. So that was one of the things that we were confronted with, and honestly, I felt like Jay did a really good job of kind of servicing the story,
yeah,
and doing something that was interesting in a 2-hour format.
yeah,
And that's why yeah, we did some changes to it, but
yeah,
um, you know, today's draft.
yeah. So this is what you had already made like a period piece before with Robin Hood, but that was more like a romp, an adventure. This was more couched in reality, maybe. Uh, I was wondering if your approach in shooting also the interactions and line and the interactions between actors was more naturalistic than it was in Robin Hood, where maybe it was more over the top sometimes, or was it only the fight scenes that were more, I don't know, maybe the overall feeling was more couched in reality than Robin Hood? Was that a conscious approach on your part? I guess so.
I can't answer that. I mean, I was reading an interview with another director the other day, and they were asking, "Why did you do something this way?" And he said, "I don't know. It's just instinctive. It's how it came to me how to do it." And I have to sort of plead that myself. Is that you change from each picture to the next. You sort of change. Your approach changes. So
Yeah.
all you can kind of rely on is your own instinct and as you respond to the material and go, well, it feels right to do it this way. So that's kind of the way I approached Monte Cristo. Yes, Monte Cristo is a little more realistic. It didn't have this sort of wild, as you say, over the top humor
Yeah.
like Robin Hood did. There's still humor in Monte
Yeah.
Cristo,
Yeah.
but it's not Alan Rickman, Sheriff of Nottingham
No,
humor,
exactly. That's what I was trying to
at
get
all.
at.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's
And
very.
I don't know, it's just a tone that, it felt right for that particular piece of material. And that's how I approached it. So again, I think if you ask most directors, analyze your style, tell me why you shot something this way. My answer is, I don't know. It just felt like the right way to do it. It's just
Yeah.
an instinctive thing.
And so you recorded, you were on television with Ridley Scott at the time discussing the duelists. And this, I know that movie was you're in love with that movie. I know you love it, and I was. This kind of leads us into the next film you made, because that was actually a movie that Ridley had been developing, had wanted to make, direct. Maybe I think maybe in the early '80s, as kind of a spiritual sequel to The Duelists. And it is the 2006 Tristan and Isolde.
Mhm.
I don't know if I pronounced that correctly in English.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tristan and Isolde.
Tristan and
Uh,
Isolde. And so Ridley was behind this project and said, I want you to do it, basically.
he did. And, Ridley and I had talked over the years a couple of times about projects.
He
Um,
wanted you were offered like Thelma and Louise, right?
yeah, he asked me to do Thelma and
He
Louise,
did
and
ask you.
he did. And I thought it was interesting, but I didn't respond to it the way he did. And thank God, because he did a great job with it. I would not have done, obviously, I wouldn't have done the same picture, but he did a brilliant job with it. And so it was right after he did Gladiator and I'd done Monte Cristo, and he asked me again, hey, why don't you do this one, Tristan and Isolde? And again, I sort of liked the story. I thought it was kind of interesting. This doomed love story.
Very
And I
Shakespearean.
said, okay, sure, I'll do it. And again, it was a situation where uh, the actor came with the offer. James
Yeah.
Franco the studio wanted James Franco. The guy I wanted was actually Henry Cavill because
Oh, because you'd work with him on Monte Cristo.
I'd worked with him on Monte Cristo, and I
Yeah.
thought, this guy's gonna do something. And I wanted Henry, but they didn't. They were like, "Oh, he's not a movie star." So they wanted James Franco, and I ended up casting Henry as
Yeah.
Malo, the
Yeah, he's in
secondary
he
roles.
is in the movie.
He is in the movie. But anyway, yeah. So we ended up shooting that, and we shot that in the Czech Republic, Prague, and yeah, we shot the whole movie there, and Ireland, in Ireland.
How did you feel like shooting in Ireland? I mean,
In
did,
Ireland?
did you like it there?
Yeah, I mean, I shot half of Monte Cristo there as well. We shot Monte Cristo, half of Monte Cristo. Monte Cristo was shot in Ireland and Malta.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. I remembered Malta, didn't remember Ireland.
yeah, so I'd already shot there
It shot
before,
there.
and so we actually shot half of Tristan, a little bit on stage, but a lot of it was shot on the west coast of Ireland in Connemara, which is just
Oh
this
yeah,
wild, beautiful place.
beautiful.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that production was done between those two countries.
Were you satisfied but the the completed film? I mean, like, did you feel like you accomplished what you had set out to do artistically or in any other way?
No, I mean, I guess enough time's passed I can talk about this. I was not crazy about, ultimately there was some conflict between James Franco and myself, and he was sort of determined to portray the character one way, and I had other ideas, and I felt like it sort of failed to realize the love story the way it should have been realized between the two principal characters. And I think it affected the film.
It
But
colored the picture in a way that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but one positive thing, I guess, came out of this experience, right? You met makeup artist Mario Michisanti.
I did. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Mario's the best.
how did he get into the picture? I mean, how did he come to work on the picture?
He was brought onto the picture along with the wardrobe guys by one of our producers on it who had worked with them on oh God, it was another icon picture. One of the producers on
Mario
Tristan.
had Mario had made Passion of the Christ
Yes,
a couple of
yes. But
years before.
he'd worked with him on Passion of the Christ, but also on God, something else prior to that. But anyway, yes,
Anyway,
it was introduced to me via one of these producers from
yeah.
Icon who said this guy's great, and he came on, and yeah, Mario's the best, and I'll never forget this. The first day, when he met the actors, and James Franco showed up, and James had this really sort of wild, kinky hair that was
Mm.
not particularly attractive. And so I was trying to describe to Mario, it just feels like somehow it needs to be softened to make him. Then as we're talking, Mario just goes over and he just kind of walks around and looks at James, and he starts taking his hair in his hand, and he just starts doing this with his hair as we're talking about stuff. And just in front of me, he just did this thing with his hair and it transformed him just like that. And I was like, shit, this guy's good.
Yeah,
Uh, and that's the way Mario is. He's a genius. He's rare. He's the maestro.
yeah,
And
and a very Italian, very passionate.
he's very Italian. He's very Italian. He gets really worked up about stuff,
Yeah,
and he can just be explosive. He's
yeah,
very Italian, but that's
very
part of what I
Italian.
love about the guy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Mario in learning Italian.
There is, there is. When I was, when you were talking about the movie, I was like, "This is Mario." Like, it's absolutely based on his life. It could be a biography movie.
It could be, but and later, I mean, we're not there yet. But when you get into talking about Hatfields and McCoys, uh, I'll go ahead and I'll tell it now. We did Hatfields and McCoys, and I was putting the crew together, and Kevin Costner had his own makeup person that he liked, and I said, you gotta work with this guy. I said, you gotta work with Mario. And he was like, what? And he said, I don't like my guy. And I said, no, trust me. I'm telling you, you got to do a beard in this thing. It's going to be really tough. And you really have got to try Mario in this thing. Okay. So he says he agreed. So Mario comes onto the show, and Mario crafted this beard that normally, most of the time they'll do like a fake beard with lace, and they'll put it
Yeah.
on every day. They peel it off and stuff. Mario did it completely different. He was taking individual hairs and pasting them onto his face every day.
Wow.
At the end of the day, taking them off and doing it again the next day. And it looked incredibly real. You look at the
Yeah.
movie, you think Costner grew that beard,
Through
but
that
he
beard.
didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't. That was Mario. And Kevin was blown away by it. So much so that he started hiring him for all of his subsequent pictures after
Subsequent
that.
pictures. Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Because it just it seems like it's real. It looks like it's real.
yeah.
But Mario, as Mario tells me, so after Tristan and Isolde comes out, and you guys, you kind of stay in touch in a way because between this movie and the next one you actually made, which was the miniseries Hatfields and McCoys, you were trying to, you and Kevin Costner were trying to get learning Italian off the ground,
Yep.
and you actually brought Mario on the movie on learning Italian, which didn't end up happening. But so you actually introduced Kevin and Mario there, if I'm in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, because the movie
Yeah.
had like some production in Germany.
We
Uh,
started, I mean, yeah, that was where we were based, but then we moved to Rome and we were 5 weeks away from shooting on the movie. And I won't go into details, but ultimately it turned out this producer that we had, he didn't have the money, you
yeah,
know, and
so
it
that
fell
didn't
apart
happen.
5 weeks before shooting.
Wow. And but quickly after that, basically Hatfields came together, Hatfields and McCoys, basically, right?
Yeah.
And were you like, was it Costner that brought you in as a director? Was the project sent to you? How did,
Yeah, it was sent to me by William Morris, WME, from their TV division. And I read it and I was like immediately went, whoa, this is great. This is a great piece of material. And so I called them and said, hey, yeah, I'd be interested in doing this. And then they go, okay, well, guess who else is interested in it? And I'm like, who? And they went, Kevin Costner. And I just laughed because
that
we've
happened
always
with
we've always responded to the same material. Like
Imperial?
Waterworld was the same thing. And as soon as they said that, I knew exactly which role he wanted to play.
The Devil.
Devil Anse. And you know, because of Kevin's involvement, more of his involvement than mine, but because the two of us, you know, wanted to do it, uh, that's what got it greenlit with History Channel.
Yeah. And
Um,
did you immediately know, were you immediately told that it was going to be filmed in Romania? Did you think it was going to get filmed in America, or was it a surprise for you?
it was a little bit, you know, when they were talking about, hey, Romania, and they said, well, let's go look in Romania because, you know, it's much cheaper to shoot there. And I had actually been to Romania about 10 years earlier when we were scouting for Tristan and Isolde. We thought about shooting in Romania.
Hmm.
It was so backwards back then, around 2003. It was really depressing. I mean, this was not that long after Ceausescu had been
Yeah,
deposed, and the country was really sort of in dire straits. But in that 10 years between then and when we went over to scout again, it had changed quite a bit. You know, the infrastructure was better. It was still not, you know, first world, but it was impressive, more impressive. And you know, I looked at the locations up in Transylvania in the studio facility, and the locations, it looked like West Virginia, which is where the thing was set.
yeah.
And the studio outside of uh, Bucharest, um, you know, was fine, and we could save a lot of money. So I was like, okay, well, this is where we have to shoot it, just because we don't have that much money to make the project.
Yeah.
So I think the whole movie, I think we spent 16 or 17 million dollars for 6 hours of material.
Wow.
Yeah,
And maybe you would have spent three times as that in
easily, easily,
America.
easily.
So did you find the whole experience shooting there as a positive, positive experience in Romania.
I did, the cruise. I love the cruise. I mean, it was a very international crew. I hired the same cinematographer that it had on Tristan and Isolde, who he's half German, half Polish. Uh, we had a real mix of person. I mean, Mario was on that as well.
Yeah, Mario was on that as well.
Right. But I liked the Romanian crews. They didn't have the experience or the expertise, but they really were enthusiastic. They wanted to do a good job, and that made a huge difference. It's just their enthusiasm, you know, and I really appreciated that. They worked really hard. They didn't get paid nearly as much as an American crew or even an English crew or anything. And yet they worked very hard, and that made a big impression on me. Um, and I don't know, some projects just have a certain serendipity that things sort of come together and they work. And I think we all felt that when we were doing Hatfields and McCoys. We didn't have a lot of money. We had to shoot fast, but everybody pitched in, had a great cast. And it just, I don't know, it just had a good feeling to it. And not every movie has that.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you cast the movie? Like, did you actually pick the actors like Tom Berenger and for each of the roles?
yeah,
Yeah, that movie is really terrifically cast. I mean, each
yeah.
actor is just uh, really perfect for the role that they're playing. And also the production design. I mean, I guess the Derek Hill didn't
Derek was great.
didn't have a lot to work with in terms of
No,
budget, and but he created a whole world, and you buy it. I
I
mean,
mean Derek was. I mean, he was great. I really liked working with Derek.
and he's from Texas as well.
He's from Texas. He's a hard charger. I mean, you know, nothing daunted Derek. And like I'll never forget. There was like one scene where it's supposed to represent where the Hatfields had these sawmills, and their
Yeah,
business was cutting down trees for sawmills. So I had to find a location that had some trees that looked like a stand of trees that could serve as the Hatfields property, and we had to cut some trees down for the scene, and had to create a sawmill. Well, Derek went out and on his own, he went out and scouted endlessly up in Transylvania where we were based until he found this one location up this little valley with a hillside and stuff. And he took me there, and I'm like, you nailed it. This is perfect. And and then also there's the whole Tug River, which is supposed to be the crossing between West Virginia and Virginia in the
yeah.
movie. And he found this location, just this perfect little river. And not only you don't realize it when you're watching the scene or when you're watching the film, but we shot so many things around those locations. We had to find scenes, or we had to find locations that were close together. So right around that Tug River scene, I think we shot, God, I don't know, we probably shot 6 or 7 different scenes around that one location.
Wow. It,
Yeah.
in terms of to save money as well and time.
Yeah,
It,
they worked. They worked,
yeah, they
but
work.
it was just also because we didn't have time to move the whole unit somewhere else. We had to find a location. We had to find locations that were relatively close together.
Yeah. Um, and were you satisfied with the overall final film? Like, did you feel like, oh yeah, accomplished what I set out to do this time around artistically?
Well, again, it was a situation where my cut's different from the final cut of the film.
Is
I
it?
was trying to make
Okay.
Hatfields and McCoys. What I think you end up seeing is more Hatfields and McCoys,
Okay.
because there were certain influences on the final edit of the picture. But it seems to have worked because it was wildly successful.
Yeah, it was a tremendous hit, on
Yeah,
television at the
as a
time.
TV series. Yeah,
The TV
yeah,
series it wasn't that common for TV series to be that big, and I mean
yeah.
for it,
Everybody was kind of shocked, the day after when it first premiered on television. I never forget the producer, Barry Berg, called me and said, I forget what he said. It was like the highest rated, highest rating ever for a miniseries or something up to that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? So it was kind of mind-boggling.
And you were also nominated
I
uh,
got nominated for an Emmy. Yeah.
for the Emmy. Was that a
Yeah.
thrill? Was that thrilling for you?
Yeah. It's always gratifying when, you get recognized like that.
Yeah.
I was kind of wild to go to the Emmys and sit there and see what it's really like. It was,
So you did go.
I went, it was, it's crazy. It's not what people think, it's like
Hmm.
you have to show up like 3 hours before and, they pick you up in a limo and there's like this line of like 40 limos waiting to unload everybody it's a production, and they unload you on the red carpet and all this press is lined up to ask you their pat questions. And then you go inside and you have to sit down like an hour before. And in the actual facility where they're doing the thing, I never realized this. They have these people that are called they're professional. Okay, what are they? Professional sitters. And during the show, whenever somebody in the show, if they get up, they're bored, they have to go to the bathroom or they go get a drink or something. They have these professional sitters that come down and sit in their empty seats. So when the camera turns around and films the audience, it looks like it's always full.
Oh,
When in fact, there are a lot of people that
people
aren't there.
missing.
They're up in the lobby or whatever, and
And they get paid for that?
they get paid for that.
I think I'll apply for that job.
Yeah,
It's easy.
but it
It's a
was
good
it was
job.
fun to do it. It was fun to do it once.
Yeah. And so yeah, that was a tremendous hit. And coming off of that hit, were you being offered jobs left and right? Did you have more like leeway to develop your own stuff? Uh,
No, I didn't. Yeah, I was hot there for a nanosecond, and they wanted me to do more TV after that. I got, trotted around to meet all these showrunners on different shows, and they wanted me to do more television.
mm,
But I found that experience of going around and meeting all these showrunners about how they did shows, I found it pretty depressing about what the nature of television was. My own stuff that I really wanted to do, nobody was interested in. Things were already changing by then in the film and television business. I mean, I wrote a limited series called Solid Citizens. It's the anatomy of a revolution, basically, in the U.S. I could already feel what was the undertone of what was going on politically in the country, and
yeah.
I wrote this thing, and I was very proud of it. Nobody would touch it. They read it and they went, "Great writing, but it's too controversial. We can't do it." But it's exactly what's going on in the country now. Um,
And what you've done with Red Dawn,
exactly. It
the
was like a
same
modern, Red Dawn sort of reflected what was going on at that time in the
at that
U.S.
time.
And so I did the same thing again, and nobody would touch it.
Mhm.
But then um, shortly after that, these guys at LD Entertainment started sending me the script called Clavius, and it was a religious picture, about the resurrection of Christ and all. And first, I wasn't that interested in doing a religious movie. It didn't really appeal to me at all, and I didn't like the script. I didn't think it was very good, and they sent it to me again, and I turned it down again. And then finally, they said, "Look, would you just come down and meet with us?" And so I flew down to LA and I met with them, and I said, "Look, I appreciate the interest, but I just don't think this is a very good script. This has been told before. It's quite frankly, it's kind of boring. It feels like a 50s religious movie or something. And I don't think it's something anybody really wants to go see." And they were like, "Well, what would you do with it?" And just off the top of my head, I said, "You got to take a different approach. You got to tell the story from a different point of view. You got to do something like a detective story, like a
Yeah,
guy trying to figure out what's happened to this missing body." And I said, "That's what it should be." And they went, "Oh, okay." So I left the meeting and I got on the plane and flying home back up to Seattle. I don't know why it just struck me. I went, wait, yeah, detective. I started writing
on the plane.
on the plane, and within the next day or two, I had like the first 15, 20 pages of the script rewritten up through the crucifixion scene and afterwards his first meeting with Pilate. And I sent it to him and I said, this is what I would do with it. And they went, okay, we like that. So I was actually finishing up Solid Citizens at the time. And I set Clavius aside and I finished Solid Citizens. And then I turned to to Clavius, which ended up being Risen. And I
Yeah.
literally wrote that script in about 8 weeks, which I think is the fastest I've ever written a script. It just, boom, it just came to me.
Just flew out of.
It just flew out. It was so weird. It was like, I was like this vessel and it just came through me and I wrote
Yeah.
it and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? And they liked it. And so that's what we made. But
And oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
it's okay. Again, I didn't want to do a religious movie. I wanted to do a movie that was more, it was more a detective story, from the eyes of a non-believer. I wanted to do a movie that was for an audience for a secular audience. It wasn't necessarily a faith-based audience. I
Yeah.
didn't want to do that kind of movie. And that's what I was trying to do with it.
Again, were you satisfied but the what you accomplished with the picture?
Not completely. Again, uh,
This seems like a recurrent theme with
it's
you.
a recurring theme. Yeah, it's a recurring theme.
I guess
Uh,
every filmmaker isn't ever satisfied with, right?
no, no, we tested it and uh, the dilemma was we've talked about this before. People saw it as neither faith-based or secular. I mean, the secular audiences weren't necessarily interested in it at all because of the subject matter. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't. They were like, I don't want to see a movie about the resurrection of Christ. I don't want to see a religious movie. I was trying to say, okay, well, it's not a religious movie. Then the faith-based audience looked at it and they went, well, this isn't true to scripture. This didn't
Yeah.
happen this way. And I was like, how do you know how it happened? Nobody knows. It's just, yeah, some people wrote down what they think happened, but nobody really knows. So you couldn't satisfy either side. But the producers, because they felt like the faith-based audience was going to be their bigger audience, uh,
They played up.
tailored the final cut more towards a faith-based audience.
Uh,
And
they tinkered
there
with
was,
that.
yeah, I mean, they took elements of it out, which I actually quite liked. I had a whole subplot in there where Clavius, the lead character, this Roman guy, he's this ruthless guy you find out he's got this secret Jewish lover, this woman that he's visiting and he's seeing, and
Yeah.
they talk about this dilemma of him being Roman and she being Jewish. And, it was a cool little subplot. And the way it
Yeah.
resolved itself, I actually was really happy with. It was really cool. It ended up not being in the movie at all. Got taken out completely. Um, so anyway, all you can do is shoot it and um,
And it's kind of
try to make something that's as close to your vision as possible and hope
yeah.
some semblance of it survives on the screen.
Yeah. What did you try and get Mario in the picture or
On Risen, yeah, I
Riz?
think I did, and I forget what it was. He wasn't available. I think he was doing something for Kevin or what. Plus, because we shot so much of it in Spain, we were trying to qualify for the Spanish rebate.
Oh, okay.
It was a huge rebate. Um, and so, in order to qualify for the rebate, we had to use a certain number of primarily Spanish personnel.
True.
And we had to use a huge number of Spanish casts
Hmm.
uh, in the movie to qualify. And so, consequently, a lot of people, a lot of the disciples especially, got cast not necessarily because they were the best for the role, but because they were Spanish and they could speak English.
Okay.
And uh, you know, sometimes those are the compromises you end up having to make
Yeah.
just to get something made.
So that was the last picture that you directed so far.
Yep.
Uh, I guess you've been trying to get other things off the ground in the years
Yeah.
since. Um, what has been the biggest hurdle you've encountered during these years between now and Reason came out that not that have not allowed you to go ahead with these other projects that you have?
The business has just changed so much. It's much harder to get anything made now. And unless you have uh, a reputation that's much higher than mine, unless you're a Chris Nolan or, uh, Martin Scorsese or somebody like that, it's extremely hard to get your movies made. That's been the biggest thing. The streaming has just really killed the theatrical business for the most part. And unless you get, unless you get one of four or five names actor wise,
Yeah.
the studios, they're not interested in the project. Um, so yeah, it's been really difficult. It's been really frustrating because I've got a handful of things that I'd really really still like to make. Also, it doesn't help that I'm an old guy. I'm an old white guy in Hollywood, and these days, you're kind of on the outs if you're that demographic. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what does the road ahead look like for you?
I have no idea. Part of me thinks I'm done. I'm retired. I'm never going to get another picture. Part of me still thinks, yeah, I still get sent stuff occasionally from time to time. Um, I've got to call somebody this afternoon about a script they just sent me. It's some of the guys that I was on Hatfields with.
Hmm.
You know, we'll
Nice.
see. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know.
Well, I wish to thank you again for allowing me the time to talk for this second session that we did, and it was a really, really terrific conversation again. And I urge anyone watching this second part and watching the first part to go and check out Kevin's films. They're available to watch anywhere and everywhere, physical media, streaming, what have you. Um, so thank you again, and hopefully I didn't. You were coming in bored the last time, so I hope.
I was bored the last time.
No, you were coming into the conversation, and you told me you were just hanging around the house, being a little
Oh, yeah, yeah,
bored,
yeah.
and so hopefully by the end of this second session, I didn't bore you more.
No, 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 no. You don't bore me. Look, I appreciate how interested you've been, and I don't think anybody knows as much about my career as you do, and it shows in your questioning, and I really appreciate that.